It's hard to believe that some of these once beloved mobile games have faced such dramatic fall-offs in recent history that it's hard to believe that some of these games were once really beloved fan games. So let's start with some of the most beloved games turned worse, Angry Birds Go. Slingshot in its way in November 2013, Angry Birds Go quickly became one of the most popular kart racing games on any mobile device at the time, and it featured a lot of the beloved characters from the Angry Birds universe: Red, Chuck, Blue, all of them, including some of the pigs. The game was praised for its vibrant graphics, diverse courses, and its fun, lighthearted experience that providing players of all ages of fun and excitement, and creating a lot of kids out there's childhoods, and has a core place in all of our hearts out there. So how can Rovio, a developer that has struck in gold yet again, ruin this? So in 2016, they infamously released a 2.0 update, which forever changed Angry Birds. This update was meant to revamp the game, but instead ended up, this just isolated half of the player base and then furtherly killed off the other half in future updates. So how did they actually do this? What was this dreadful 2.0 update? This introduced its sweeping changes that fundamentally just changed the whole game, which a lot of fans didn't appreciate in the ways that they did change the game. One of the most significant changes that they did was they completely overhauled the whole game structure. And this is a game that we got familiar with. Why would you change something that you could make small adjustments, but changes like this could not go unseen? While the original game had a variety of modes that you could just choose between races and challenges freely whenever you wanted to actually play them, 2.0 decided to replace this with a rigid and level-based structure, which you would have 4 levels and then 1 boss level, and this made the game very repetitive and just killed off all enjoyment I and a lot of you guys had out there. The most impactful and the most change that we've seen was the impact of the kart upgrading system that they introduced in the 2.0 update, which introduced a lot more complex and a lot more grind heavy upgrading system that we didn't want at all and it wasn't needed. Upgrading your kart didn't just require coins now, it required specific kart parts with 3 different types needed for each kart, which was so grindy to do. And buying new karts required blueprints, which was another thing that you need, which you could just see that they wanted to implement, that you needed to spend some money in this game, making a pay-to-win model. And when you have a pay-to-win model, it's not looking good for the audience behind your game. And instead of Rovio taking 2 steps forward, they took 2 steps back and jumped through the window behind them. They destroyed this game and put it into a pit they are yet to recover and won't be able to recover from to this day. So Angry Birds Go points a really great picture that how you have to cautiously go about game updates by not changing too much, but giving us just enough so we can thrive. But there was no need for this update to begin with. The game was already doing exceptional before that, but Rovio feeling like they needed to revamp the game, I guess they needed to do what they needed to do, and sadly, it caused the downfall of the Angry Birds Go, which sadly is removed off the App Store. But another game that just didn't get to captivate the fans was Angry Birds 2. Being the long overdue game to the sequel of the original game that set the whole franchise up, it had quite a bit of pressure behind it to deliver on what its predecessor had. You see a game succeed so well, it's quite difficult to witness the downfall that is happening. And I say is because Angry Birds 2 was released in 2015 and is still up and running to this day, which is crazy for an Angry Birds game. This was 6 years after the original game release, so they had to innovate and take the next steps to make this franchise grow into the modern day, and they failed on a couple of aspects of the game. Starting with the level design, the core gameplay falls quite flat when placed next to a lot of other games, especially at the time. It just felt like a randomly generated level game. While it kind of sounds appealing at first, it introduces elements of unpredictability, and it quickly becomes clear that it was a poor fit for the Angry Birds formula. One of the most significant downfalls of the game is that the aggressive use of microtransactions, which is roared by the fans of the game to this day. Unlike the original game, which allows you to progress through the level through skills and perseverance, Angry Birds 2 constantly pushes you towards spending real-life money, and the life system is a prime example of this. I know this was switched out, but this was in the history books that we do need to talk about. And the player normally started with 5 lives, and each time they failed a level, they'd lose 1. So when they all ran out, you had to wait a certain amount of time to continue playing the game. And if you didn't want to do that, you'd have to spend money to continue paying. But this pay-to-win approach was blatantly designed to generate revenue at the expense of all the consumers, to grab bucks from your pocket. And don't get me started with the hash thing. If you neglected it, it just eventually just ran away, which is just jarring. And while the Angry Birds 2 graphics can be heard for visual complaints, I think it's stunning, and it still holds up to this day as one of the best graphical designs in this game, maybe for Reloaded in my opinion. But this can't be a fresh new aspect for a lot of the ideas for Angry Birds 2, especially the ideas for the game. Angry Birds 2 just borrowed from a lot of other popular mobile games, rather than innovating its own system, where it took the life system from similar games like Candy Crush and Clash of Clans, stuff like that. They made little effort to make their own ideas for the Angry Birds universe and put it into a meaningful way to have an Angry Birds spin on it. If there was some, it would be nice if they had a spin to it. And this just diluted that game's identity, which just washed it out into the rivers of the spin-offs of the Angry Birds games. Main criticism for Angry Birds 2 is it just doesn't feel like a true sequel to the original game at all. While Rovio marketed it as the next big step in the Angry Birds franchise, fans argue that it can be seen that it was already released in the form of Angry Birds Season or Rio and the other spin-off games, let's say, put those in parentheses. These games expanded on the original formula with new levels, characters, themes, design, sound, everything. It was true to form, while Angry Birds 2 just feels more like a cash grab than a genuine adaptation in the series and taking it to the next step. And it lacks soul, creativity, and just looks very corporatized, you can say so. Placed it with random level design, unnecessary features that nobody asked for, and just relentlessly pushes microtransactions in your face. And it's kind of disheartening to see a beloved game like this, especially when it carries the name Angry Birds 2, the sequel to the original game, just stray so far from where it came from and not deliver on any of these big new features that Rovio told us that they were delivering on. Three games have had a staple in mobile gaming industry for decades now, and it has captivated players with the simple but very addictive gameplay mechanics, from the classics from Bejeweled to the explosion of Candy Crush in the 2010s. The genre has seemed to have its fair shares of highs and lows throughout the decades. It's about time that Rovio finally put their hands and put it into some match 3 games. And they had some really great, captivating, wonderful gameplay that had innovated, wonderful, just good gameplay to have in Angry Birds Fight. That was an amazing match 3 game, RPG type game, which they aced out of the park. And then we have some more let's just say less good games. Some of the other match 3 type games that they've produced in the long time since Angry Birds Fight was released and then removed, sadly, again. Angry Birds Fight does seem to be forgotten quite a bit because it was removed before the 2019 removal of half of the App Store anyway from the Angry Birds catalog, and it was a wonderful game. Angry Birds Fight is a match 3 game, obviously, where it has a PvP element, so every match 3 you attack your opponent and you try to eliminate them, which is fundamentally amazing. From the structural point, the way they've done it, the strategy, the progression, everything about this game is good. But we're not here to talk Angry Birds Fight. So how can they go from this critically acclaimed 9 out of 10 to a 2 out of 10 in Angry Birds Match 3? How can this happen? Take everything good from Angry Birds Fight and do the opposite of that, and you got Angry Birds Match. So if you have good gameplay, this one has bad gameplay. So the repetitive gameplay and the lack of innovation in this game is so prominent in this. It's literally a cookie cutter match 3 game swapped out with Angry Birds characters. That's basically all I need to say, but I'm gonna go a bit more into depth about this. So the aesthetics and the design, there's a lot of issues here. Initially, when it was first released, it had its colorful gameplay mechanics and colorful graphics, the character design, which were the movie style, which some fans had an issue with, but I'm not fully on every game. Some games I'm not against, like Angry Birds Evolution, but that's not the point. But it felt really repetitive after a while. It was very uninspired. It just kind of lacked personality, if you understand what I'm trying to say. It just didn't have its own concept, its own personality that was punching like the rest of the games. Angry Birds Fight had its RPG swing on it. Angry Birds Pop had its own little twist on but Angry Birds Match 3 was just a cookie crusher based game. It just cookie cutter. It was like they had a template, switched up some Angry Birds things, slapped the Angry Birds name onto it, and then put it out to the masses. Another major issue that a lot of fans have, the audience reviewers had, was the forced and aggressive monetization of the game. The way that you needed to pay to win was crazy. Probably taking this from Candy Crusher and the unlimited endless type game, and it was just really basic. They were forcing microtransactions down your throat, and this all together ultimately led to its bad review, and also just fans not liking the game at all, and just causing the game to crash in general. Quite astonishing that how they went through Angry Birds Fight, one of the highest recommended games to play for the Angry Birds franchise when you first go in, to Angry Birds Match 3, where they had an amazing Match 3 game, and the fall off to a Match 3 game literally called Angry Birds Match 3 was unbelievable on the fall off. The game lacked personality, didn't have any unique designs, no innovations. It just really sad to see. It just shows if you don't have personality for a game, it's not gonna last in the long run. But if you had any thoughts on any other games that I left out, let me know below.